Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another exciting discussion on all things well being. This is Dr. Kimberly Quinn, and I am here today with Skip Harris, and he's going to give us a nice discussion on sort of the heads up and what's happening with mental health here at the beautiful Champlain College in Burlington, Vermont. So, to begin, is it okay if I call you Skip?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, Skip. How about we start out with maybe telling us how long you've been at Champlain, and then maybe we'll kind of lean into everything you do here.
Sure. Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Kim. Um, so my name is Skip Harris. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the director of the counseling center at Champlain College. I've been here for 11 years, and the last 7 years, wow, that's jumped up on me as the role of director. Prior to that, I was the associate director, and actually why I came to Champlain was I worked in community mental health for years. Loved the work, and just sort of wanted to change. And I saw an ad in the paper and I jumped on it, and I just wanted to be a clinician. I did not want to manage people. And here I am 11 years later, managing a staff of 6 clinicians at Champlain College and 3 graduate interns, which they are all lovely and amazing people.
All right, Skip. So maybe we'll just jump right in because I know you've seen a lot. You're right on the front lines as one of Champlain's superheroes, with the front lines of everything that's going on with mental health. So how about maybe if you want to start with um, if you've seen any differences over the last we had the coronavirus, right, for 2 years, almost 2 years. It's gone, but it's not gone. And what have you seen as far as you know um, mental health issues coming back this fall?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year when we pivoted to really like doing the telehealth thing, right? When the Rona came, we switched gears real quick, and we provided all of our services remotely, which we're happy to be able to do that. What we've noticed this year since returning to in-person learning and having our wonderful students on our campus is the demand for our services has increased dramatically. We keep pretty good data on that, and last year at this point we'd had like 456, not like we had 456 appointments. This year we're 20% higher. So students are really accessing our services, which we want and we think is really great. The chief complaint, like you would probably guess, anxiety, depression. And I think that like the thing that we're really noticing, and not just me, but the clinicians on the team, um, we've noticed that students who maybe had a disposition to having anxiety or issues with anxiety, social anxiety, general anxiety, whatever it might be, if you're in your house, not interacting with people, you're not using that muscle. So now students are back in person and they're being forced to sort of use those muscles. So obviously there's going to be an increase in students who are experiencing anxiety. So at the center, we really try to give kids, students, tools so that when they leave each session that they actually have something that they can use when they're out in the dining hall, when they're having conflict with their friends, when they're getting invited to something that they might not want to go to. What we do know, last year we worried about the isolation and how that impacted our students. I think this year, the isolation is not as present, but it's still impacting our students because of the social expectations around being on a college campus.
Wow, cool, Skip. You know what? I have to tell you where my head went with that. When you're talking about exercising, the muscle, like the mental health muscle. I'm not sure what you'd say. It immediately brought my head to the gym. Like if you don't, my grandmother, probably everybody's grandmother said, use it, you lose it, kind of thing. Would you mind just like for our listeners, kind of just expanding on what you meant?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and I think it's exactly that, right? So I think our students during the pandemic, they weren't forced to use that muscle, and I think that muscle, really what we're talking about, is the ability to navigate social situations, especially those who might be predisposed to having some sort of anxiety disorder. So if you're not using those skills in the world, you're not practicing them. So by not practicing them, they become dormant. And then when you're forced to use those in the world, like our students are now being in person, it takes a lot of work.
Okay, Skip. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing right, that the biggies. I know you see lots of things that come through the door, and all, I'm sure, different. It sounds like that the top two runners up are anxiety and depression.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what would you say are the biggest challenges for yourself and your team of counselors with the current circumstances?
Yeah. So good question. We're actually seeing a couple different things. We're seeing the acuity. So people are presenting with more intense presentation. So they're needing just more services. So just the acuity is up and the numbers are up. So again, when I was talking about the data and the numbers, just the sheer volume of students who are accessing our services is really putting a lot of pressure on us. That's not a Champlain College thing. That's not a Burlington thing. That's a national thing. So when I speak to my partners in the community, folks down at First Call, which is our local mental health center, we all often use them for backup in the event that we need someone to help us with a suicidal student or someone who needs a formal assessment. Um, what they're saying is they're experiencing the same thing: acuity increase, lots of volume, which is putting pressure on our own clinicians because that was a support and a resource that we used in the past. So we're really like figuring out how to manage that in house more, and we've had some really great trainings that have allowed us to do some really awesome interventions, specifically working with students who are experiencing suicidal ideation and or other psychotic type issues that would maybe require a different type of assessment. So knowing that a student might have to wait at the hospital 7 or 8, 9, 10 hours, we're trying to do some of that stuff more in-house when we feel like it's within our scope.
Wow, Skip, I have to tell you, I do know that it's, I know from just outside situations too, that it's, the whole country is overwhelmed
Yeah.
with, and there's, waiting lists and just really lengthy waiting lists. So if you could tell us, how are you and your team like managing that?
Right. Yeah, so we've implemented a triage system, and the triage system is not new. We've had it for a few years now, where any student who requests an appointment can be seen within 24 hours of making that request. So essentially, each clinician has a triage and or walk-in day, so that allows Rachel, our office coordinator, to schedule 5 intakes per day. And then on top of that, students can also just walk in if they're in crisis. So essentially what that enables us to do is really assess what a student's needs are. And obviously, if there are any safety concerns, we're going to keep that student near and dear to us, and or access outside help if it mandates that. But the triage system has really been an effective way to really get students in, assess what their needs are. And then unfortunately, we do have a waiting list right now, but the way we manage that is students right now who come into the office for an intake, they're immediately pretty much told that we do have a wait list, but we are providing groups. So students then get put on a list to attend groups. We also have session limits, so students can hopefully get back into CS for individual counseling rather quickly if they are on a wait list. So we're trying to manage the volume with implementing some session limits.
Okay, Skip, excellent. Because right now, like, my mind just sort of went to trauma, right, which is different than big stress because it actually rewires the brain. So the mind's or the mind's inability to cope, right?
Right.
So it rewires it. So and I've heard, sometimes I hear people say, "Ooh, like the pandemic's almost like a trauma." And in my head, you don't want to be that person,
Right.
but incorrect them. But you're saying it is a trauma.
It actually is a trauma.
And so, what effects, if any, are you seeing, you and your team seeing here, there, that you think are like directly, trauma effects related to the pandemic?
Yeah, and this isn't necessarily a new notion, but I guess we're seeing a lot more of the avoidance cycle. So what really that means is student maybe wakes up feeling super anxious or feeling low, ends up skipping that first class. And then maybe skipping that second class, and then they give themselves permission to it's a mental health day. We all need mental health days, okay? But sometimes what happens with certain students who are experiencing anxiety and or trauma is that avoidance continues. So maybe day two, we're not doing any work, we're not handing in any work, maybe not going to class, maybe not going to the dining hall. So we start avoiding and avoiding and avoiding, and that quickly piles up on students, which really just reinforces the trauma or the anxiety that they're already feeling. And we work with a lot of students around how do we break down those barriers so you can get back to class. And really, we try to empower students to help themselves get out of that avoidance cycle. And yeah, sure, we're here to help and offer some suggestions. But really, what our first suggestion is why don't you email your professors, all five of them, copy me on that email so they then know that we are working together, and just write them a note saying that you've had a really tough week, you've been struggling with X, Y, or Z, and that you intend to connect with them following the next class and make a plan to get caught up. Well, that intervention sometimes is really effective. Other times it's not. And I think our clinical work really becomes focused on what are those other barriers that are really preventing students from either sending out that email, getting back into class, re-engaging in work. The nice thing about Champlain College is we have a lot of resources on campus, and it's not just a counseling center. We really rely heavily on the smart space and our academic advisors and the registrar's office when students are really struggling around that avoidant pattern. But it's definitely we are seeing way more of that currently.
Oh, I want to reside here for a second, Skip, if that's okay.
Sure.
Excellent, because especially, my thing is cognitive psychology. And I'm wondering if students, because sometimes we get things, we don't get it consciously, you know what I mean? And I'm wondering if they get it cognitively speaking, that each time they're engaging in an avoidant behavior, such as, because I see this on the professor end, right?
Sure.
Somebody who doesn't miss is now missing this time, then that, then it's like a thing, a pattern. If they get that each time they withdraw and cease to do whatever is that's avoidant, right? That they're actually strengthening it, like when a dog sits and you give it not a biscuit but a prime rib bone. You know what
Right.
I mean? Do they get it? It's the first part of that. And then for the parents who are listening, what might you say to them?
Right. Do they get it? Um, I think, I mean, obviously, the huge generalizations, right? Yes, I think some students get it. Um, I think a lot of students get it. I think there's just a lot of shame attached to that. They're ashamed that they haven't been doing what they needed to do. They're feeling judged, not intentionally by professors, but I think that's sort of in their own sort of, that's their own anxiety, right? That they're letting someone down. They're letting their professor down. They're letting their team down if they're engaged in team projects. So yeah, I think there's a lot of shame attached to that, and it's hard to break down that shame and feeling judged. But to your point, yeah, I think the bone analogy is real and it's true. And I think if I had that magic wand, we wouldn't be seeing the students sort of struggling the way that they are with the avoidance pattern in particular. What would I say to parents? I guess I talk to parents about this a lot, and I think there's a way to be supportive, but also hold people accountable. And we don't want parents emailing professors or faculty or staff in terms of sort of helping them or cleaning up their mess. We really want students to feel empowered, because what we know is, like, when students feel empowered, that is a great way to sort of break down those barriers. And once you're empowered and you're rocking and rolling, you're back in class, you can actually learn from that situation, right? So whether there's like a clinical intervention or you just sort of figure it out, I think like students who do get out of that pattern really become aware of sort of what brought them there, how they got there, and how to avoid being there. So we can sort of use that in a clinical way moving forward, so that they don't get back into that place.
Okay, Skip. So are you saying that in essence, when they actually they go through this difficult time and there's some
Yeah.
embarrassment. You said shame, which is even deeper, right? Because that's like that feeling of being flawed and damaged and things like
Right.
that. That they actually, you're seeing students often come out on top, like that they're learning some kind of resiliency skills from it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and great point. So especially like first year students, right? Who maybe this has been a pattern in high school, and maybe they had mom and dad who were there to sort of get them through that, right? Here you are at college, you don't have mom and dad to get you through that. However, there is lots of support, and when students they avoid and then they struggle with avoidance and then come out the other side. What we know is that they've developed some sort of tool or tools that help them sort of identify what got them there, right? Why did I avoid, and then how did they feel when they were avoiding, right? Like what did that pressure feel like, and what did that shame feel like, um and then when they come out the other side, like how good did that feel, right? When you came up with a solution, you problem solved, you got back on track. That's just growth, right? And when we grow in that way, that's muscle memory too. So that just sticks with us, and we see sophomores, juniors, seniors who routinely come to me and say, look, I sort of know what's going on right now, I just need a little tune up. I feel like I'm sort of getting to that place where I avoid, and we really reflect on, well, what worked last time.
Excellent. So this is sounding very Marty Seligman to me, Skip. It's father of positive psychology, of course, because it sounds like the students act. It's post traumatic growth, is what you're saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And kind of like a deposit in the self esteem bank. So there's like a momentum there.
yes,
So, and speaking of momentum, I'm wondering if you can, that the old cliche. It's cliche, but cliches come from someplace, right? So
yes,
that old, the put the oxygen mask on yourself first, like the airplanes, like in there, because you're not any good to you or anybody else. So, what do you do? And if you want to talk about your team or just you, it's fine. What do you do, taking care of the
sure,
caregiver wise, so that you stay, um, you know, uh, rejuvenated?
yeah. Um, yeah, we talk about our own personal wellness all the time. So my team, we meet regularly, weekly, and then I meet with each clinician individually, and that's one of the things that we always check in on. A, how are you doing? And B, how are you taking care of yourselves? I speak to myself, speak for myself. Exercise is super important. I know I'm like a much better clinician, a much better dad, a much better husband. When I get that workout in, going for that walk at lunchtime, just getting outside when you can. Being behind closed doors with students regularly for 6-7 hours at a time during a day, it's stressful, and it can become overwhelming. Also, making sure that my team really understands that they can take a break. Really, like not sick days, but being able to have the space in place to just take the day if and when they need it. And I feel like we're in the helping business, so we always want to help, and but we can't help if we're not well ourselves. So it's really something that we check in and we talk a lot about, not only as a team, but when I meet with clinicians individually. So, and I also feel supported by the college in myself in my position, my boss frequently checking in and making sure that I'm taking a break and that I'm okay. So I think just like giving people permission to say no, like I'm full, and giving people permission to really take the space when they need it.
Oh, Skip, that's just great. And as you know, I think I think we've been here about the same amount of time, 10 or
Yeah,
11 years for
11
me too.
years.
And I'm right with you on that one. And as you know, I'm as you are as well. We're both kind of keep it real people. And I think it's worth saying though, because hopefully people are listening in different work environments can know that it really does exist out there where your workplace supports well-being. And Skip and I share um, our boss
A
lady
boss.
Susan, who's amazing, and
Yeah.
it's when they say take time, they actually mean it. It's not like here's your sick days,
Right.
but then they'll look crazy at you. And also Laurel over with the professor has. So and up top, right?
Yep.
The provost and the powers
President.
that be, the president, like, right? And so, did you feel the same way?
Yes, I mean, I think, that's always been a message. I've been, again, at Champlain for 11 years, and that's the message I've always heard loud and clear from my bosses, but again, also the cabinet and the president. No, I'm super appreciative of Susan, and she really, it's not just to the counseling department, it's to the whole division. Like, take care of yourselves, because if we're not doing that, how can we help all our students who need our help?
I can't say enough about that. Actually, I just thought of something because I remember Susan earlier when there were a lot of requests coming my way, and all good stuff, but I pictured her kind of like a blocker, like I was a quarterback.
Yes.
She's doing enough, bang, bang, bang.
I feel like she's doing that for me too right now.
Yeah.
Like, she just knows how swamped we are, and she's like, okay, how can we figure out how you don't have to work, like parents weekend, not parents weekends, but like, the accepted student days and some of those other things. And it's just one of those things that, like, I feel supported, and when you feel supported, it's a lot easier to come to work.
Oh my God, it's so true. I feel that way in both of my hats. I really, truly, you can say how you feel here.
Right.
I feel that way.
Yes.
You can say whatever, and you're allowed to be human.
Yeah.
And I think when the what you were saying earlier says, let's go another couple minutes so that the other people out there get that, like, this does exist.
It does, and it should exist everywhere.
It should.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think, I'm not from corporate America, never worked in corporate America really, but I would think people's productivity would be higher if they had permission to take a break, take care of themselves, etc. I mean, I think Google figured that out.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Google's had that down for you, and also people's own biorhythms. Like, if you're more of a night person, because adults love autonomy.
Yeah.
You don't need to babysit most autonomous grown-ups.
No. And I think that was one of the things that was when I first came to Champlain, why I did not want a supervisory position, was because I didn't want to babysit. And what I know clearly about this team is I've never had to babysit. They're just independent, hardworking, great people who want to help.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, if you love what you do and where you do it,
right,
you're so motivated intrinsically that none of that's even necessary. Just take your wellness day, take your
right.
So I'm glad that I already knew you were on that same page with me. Little higher education humor there.
Yes.
No pun intended. So we can just roll right with that. So Skip, I'd like to thank you. You also gave me a little extra time here. We're a couple of chatties, and it worked out great. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope folks enjoy our talk.